the next foreseeable future, I guess, hour or so, as we got a lot of subjects to get to. Casey, Nate, this is your first time meeting. Casey and Nate, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you, Joe?
Doing
good to see you,
doing
Nate.
Good.
Good to see you, buddy.
How's the weather down in Tennessee?
It's wretched. It took me like 30 minutes to get to work because it's pouring down rain so bad that you can't even see. So
God.
I was not expecting that when I woke up this morning, and the dog did not want to go outside. Let's just say that.
Oh, God.
She had no desire to step outside in that. I had to carry her out there. No, she had no desire.
All right, let's say we got a lot to get to. I want to start out with a little. I know, Nate, you don't watch a lot of hockey, but last night for guys in this area, New York, another heartbreaking loss to Florida. I don't know if you were paying any attention to it, Nate, at all, or whatever. Did you check out any of the hockey?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. I watch playoff hockey. I don't watch much regular season hockey, but I do.
I'm with you.
I do check out playoff hockey.
This is the real season. To me, the regular season is the preseason.
Yeah, no doubt.
They're making
Games don't matter. Just make the playoffs.
They're making every sport into that. All right, I'll start with you, Casey.
Yeah, but Joe, hockey more than anything else. This year was kind of an aberration because you had 3 top-seeded teams make the Final Four. So 3 first-place teams in Edmonton, which came in second in their division.
Right.
Usually, though, you see so many upsets. Like last year, the Panthers, the same Panthers that just beat the Rangers. Last year, they were an 8 seed, and they made the championship round. Yeah. So to me, most of the time, hockey just make the playoffs, and then everybody's equal.
But then again, when you look at it, what happened with baseball last year with Arizona, it's the hot pitchers, it's the hot goalies. The more people you put in there, the less likely you're going to have of all the top seeds getting through. But let's get into what happened to the Rangers, what we saw happen. Casey, you and I were talking about coming on the air, and again, I said it before the playoffs. It was a referendum on Panarin. He disappears in the playoffs, and he did it again last night or this series.
Whole series, yeah. The whole all their offensive firepower disappeared. Who are the 2 guys on the top line?
Kreider and Zibanejad.
Thank you. Yeah. So Kreider scored what? 49 goals this season.
Yeah.
He was one away from 50.
Yeah.
And what did he have in this round in 6 games? 0.
He had one goal this round.
Oh yeah, you're right. Game 5. You're right. He scored in Game 5. And Zibanejad the same thing. They were both non-existent. So I don't think you can just blame Panarin. I mean, the whole offense just disappeared. The only one that had a good game was Trocheck. A good series was Trocheck. He scored 4 or 5 goals early on. Of course, didn't do much lately, but you can't blame him. You can't blame Shesterkin, and pretty much everyone else you can blame.
Yeah, and including their coach, who really didn't make any kind of major adjustments, or I thought of putting in Remke on line with Panarin as a protector, but he didn't do anything like that. So again, Madison Square Garden, Rangers and Knicks leave us wanting, and we'll get into it.
What is it about New York sports, buddy? I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. I mean, it's almost like it's the Cleveland of the East Coast. I mean, it's
Nate, I think you go a little too far. I mean, the Rangers on 4, the Knicks without their injuries would have also probably gotten swept by Boston also, but and the Yankees are hot, but everyone else, I agree with you.
Well, I think the thing is, and I hate giving respect to the Yankees, but I mean, if you take the Yankee 27 championships away from New York City, the Knicks have 2. I think the Giants have 5 or 6. The Jets have 1.
The Giants have 4.
No, those Super Bowls.
Okay,
yeah,
you're right. Our lifetime.
Then you got the Jets who have 1. Right. You have the Nets who haven't won since the ABA.
Hey, the Jets are going to win this year, though, man. Come on.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get
That's
to
what
that.
they said last.
We're going to get to that in a few minutes. While we're on it, while I was segueing into basketball, is for 2 reasons. First of all, can somebody please explain to me? I guess it's the old saying that winning is the greatest deodorant, because now Kyrie Irving is the face of the NBA and everybody's favorite player. Well, I just don't get. I understand that Dallas is on a roll. I understand. But it just reminds me of the Beckham thing from a couple of years ago with the Rams, when they tried to make Beckham into the reason that the Rams made the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl, even though he had a pedestrian year at best and caught 2 passes in the Super Bowl and then got injured for the rest of the game. And everybody's saying he should have been the MVP. I love how the narrative in sports will switch on a dime and for no apparent reason. You guys, what do you think about the Kyrie Irving regeneration?
I can't stand the guy personally. He's the reason I'm rooting against the Mavericks. And I don't even like the Celtics, but I certainly hope they win.
I am
the guy's a
exactly the
head
same.
What's that?
I said I feel the exact same way. I cannot. I mean, I'm a Duke fan, and I still can't stand Kyrie Irving.
Oh, he was only there 1 year anyway.
Yeah, for 10 games. So, but still, usually we stick with boys in the brotherhood, but I cannot cheer for this guy. I mean, dude disappears, from the team for whatever reason. And when he is there, it's all about me. And, I'm actually shocked, to be honest with you, that the Mavericks have been able to do this with Kyrie Irving as one of their centerpieces. I mean, look at what the disaster, the Nets were trying to, bring those 3 guys in and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and, James Harden. And I kind of thought, the Mavericks would face a similar fate. But they were able to, they've been able to win because they have good role players. They have good young guys, especially, the draft pick on Derek Lively hit. But, I'm actually got to be honest, I'm pretty surprised that they've been able to put it together. And I kind of feel like it was more like the Timberwolves fell apart. The Mavericks, just taking over.
Surprising, wasn't it, the way the Timberwolves handled Denver, especially coming from 20 down in Game 7 in Denver? You thought they were destined, and certainly it seems to me a much more balanced team. Edwards came of age, and Towns was really good, and Gobert is great at what he does, and they had a great supporting cast. And you're right, to me, Dallas is a 2-man team, and just like you, I'm shocked that there's any kind of cohesiveness to that team, that he hasn't torn it apart like he had. He's had so many stops because he's not wanted anywhere, and he doesn't want to be anywhere. He's never happy. And you're right, he sits out for the damnedest reasons, only known to him, except for when he wouldn't get the vaccine. I mean, what kind of team player is that? And I'm shocked that like Durant didn't pull him aside and say, "Hey, listen, wussy." I think I buffered. Listen, wussy, put your arm out for 5 seconds and take one for the team. We need you on the court. Forget your politics and your views for the sake of the team. This is a team sport here, and he totally ruined that season and that team.
Him and Durant, and that's that was one of those things we've talked about it. Me and Nate have talked about this at length about how the Nets were an enjoyable team to watch before Durant and Kyrie Irving got there. They had a bunch of young players who played well together, role players. They had a good young coach, and the first thing they do, they come in, they get the coach fired. They get their big buddy acquired, who turned out to be a bust, and they sit around and they paid KD to rehab for a year. They paid him to rehab for a year. I mean, the power in sports is getting to be too much into the players' hands, and it's making it harder and harder and harder as fans to take them seriously. And I just don't know what you can do at that point. But the thing about the NBA playoffs, do you think that it was just a matter of timing? The fact that Dallas had to go through OKC, whereas Minnesota did them the favor by taking Denver out. If Denver had been there, do you think it would have been a different story, Nate?
I do. I think the Timberwolves, they kind of expended all their energy, against Denver, and that was a crucial help for everybody else. And it's kind of like the East. The whole playoffs this year have been, fairly interesting in the sense that, the Bucks weren't healthy. Giannis was out. That's a big piece to be missing when you're trying to make a playoff run. And they had other injuries as well. Damian Lillard was hurt for a lot of the Bucks games, and so they were kind of not a factor. And then you had the injuries in New York. Embiid was hurt. in Philadelphia. So, you kind of had de facto Pacers winning because no one else was really healthy at all, and the Pacers kind of played out of their mind.
And then Halliburton got hurt too.
Yeah, and then he went down, and so then that was it for them. And then the West, the Lakers ran into the Nuggets early, and that's their kryptonite, so they were out. And it's kind of just been by default, in my opinion. But you got to give credit to Luka. I mean, this guy's been tearing up the league in Dallas, pretty much since he got there. And, he's kind of stepped it up even more this year, and especially this playoffs. I mean, 36 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists the other night against Minnesota to close them out. He's playing big in the big games, and he's stepping up, in the playoffs, which has been a little bit of a problem for him thus far in his career.
All right, and Casey, when you think about the NBA playoffs right now and what's going on in the NBA playoffs, especially the final now, is this the duel to be the face of the NBA, Jason Tatum against Luka? Is it because LeBron, he's getting on, KD getting on, even Steph is now in his 30s. So we're looking for the next face. What do you think? Is this the duel for the next face of the NBA?
Yeah, it could be. It certainly could be. They're obviously the two of the biggest stars in the game right now. They do have a little support with with Brown on the Celtics, and with the aforementioned Irving on Dallas.
The name we will not mention.
Voldemort.
But yeah, they're definitely two of the brightest stars in the league, up and coming. They're just probably going to get better. What kills me about the Celtics, never a Boston fan living in New York, and grown up in New Jersey and then Connecticut, so basically New York, but never rooting for any of the Boston teams. That net trade of a few years ago when they got Garnett and when they got Pierce,
yeah,
and they gave up all these draft choices, which turned out to be Tatum and Brown. And that set the tone for both franchises for at least a decade, right?
Right.
Because the Nets went nowhere with those veterans who were past their peak. And look at what Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are doing now with the Celtics. It's just a horrible trade by the Nets and a terrific trade by the Celtics. And just seeing those guys on the court just constantly reminds me of that and the Nets' failures.
I forgot about that trade. Wow.
Yeah,
right.
That's what made the Celtics what they are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brooklyn. Speaking of impatient New York teams, of course, I'm driving around yesterday morning listening to Sports Talk Radio. And as always, a Knicks fan has to come up and call about possibly getting LeBron to come here and be the final piece. And even if we have to draft Bronny, let's bring them to town. And the trades you're talking about is like Julius Randle and DiVincenzo plus 4 top draft picks for LeBron. I'm like, why? It doesn't work.
He's 40, isn't he?
He'll be 40 next year. I mean, LeBron is one wherever he goes. For full disclosure, Nate is a big supporter of LeBron, always has been. And I think LeBron is fantastic wherever he goes. But the two things I see wrong with this is, first of all, you're only going to rent him for a year or two. He just wants to play with his son. I think he's about ready to move on. He's broken every record he'd won. He's already in the Hall of Fame. What the hell? But then you're stuck with his son. And what are you going to do with this kid who you don't even know how good he's going to be, or if he's even ready for the NBA? What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, man, I do not think that his son is ready even to play in the NBA, to be honest with you. I watched him play quite a bit last year, checking him out when he was on USC, and this guy wasn't even a starter for the USC Trojans. I mean, we're talking about a team that was under 500 in the Pac-12, and the young man, averaged 4 points a game. So I'm not sure who's telling us and telling him that he's ready for the NBA, but it makes no sense to me. I get it that he wants to play with his dad, but shouldn't you be an NBA caliber player before you go into the NBA? I just, say my dad was a fantastic brain surgeon. I don't think they'd bring me into the operating room just because, he has steady hands, and maybe his son might be good too. I mean, just because your dad's good at something doesn't mean that you're worth a shit. So I'm really confused as to what's happening right now. And this guy is borderline a second round pick, and people are talking about taking him in the first round, to try and get his dad. And I think that's ludicrous. I honestly believe, LeBron will be back in LA next year. I don't see any other place for him to go. And given the makeup of the teams right now, and I think him and Anthony Davis, were able to win a title. They just needed other guys. They needed the role players around him, like we were talking about the Mavericks have, and we were talking about the Pacers having, and some of those other teams. They just need some other guys around him. If you look back to 2020 when they had Rondo, who still had a couple of miles left on the tread, and they had Dwight Howard, and they had Markieff Morris, and they had some guys that could actually help LeBron and Anthony Davis. They were able to win. I mean, yeah, LeBron is old, but not many 40-year-old guys average 30 points, 8 rebounds and 6 assists. So he can still. It's just amazing what he's been able to do. But
Nick, does that put the Knicks over the top two if they make a deal like that?
He's not going to the Knicks, man. That's not going to happen.
That would be the only reason for making that trade, right?
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, you got LeBron's only going to play where he wants to play. I mean, let's be honest. He's done that his whole career ever since he left Cleveland the first time. And do I see him wanting to go to New York and listen to Tom Thibodeau tell him to play defense?
Yeah.
Fuck no, that's not going to happen.
No, that's the thing that came to mind with me is like Tibbs and him would not get along. It would be a headbutt. Whose team is it? And Tibbs has what he has right now is perfect for him. He has guys that don't have the cachet to get him fired, should I say, and also are willing to listen and do what he says for them to do. They're willing to do the roles they're supposed to do, and I just don't see that as a good marriage at all. They
finally have a good team that made some progress. They suffered a ton of injuries, but were still able, to get to the, conference, deep in the conference playoffs because they have a group of guys that can play together. I mean, this Villanova core, really impressed me with what they were able to do. And the fact that they kept having guys go down and kept fighting, I think that shows, that this team is ready to take the next step. The one thing they need to do is get rid of Mitchell Robinson because this guy, is always hurt. And, I always forget he's even on the Knicks until someone mentions that he's on, the injured list once again. So, you need to get a big guy that can actually play and doesn't sit in the training room the entire game. And maybe another piece here or there, but you don't need to bring in another max contract player. I think with the group of guys that you've already got,
I think they just need to run it back. I mean, they were so successful despite of all those injuries, like you said. So much of the success was attributable to Thibodeau because he worked with what he had, and they won 50 games, and by all rights they should have made. And if they pull something drastic like that, that's going to just put this team in a whole different direction. They've made such strides, and they've got room to move up to do even better. And it's just going to throw them all off on a tangent.
Well, I think the problem is, and it's kind of it's a New York media driven problem with the fact that they all come up. Everybody's an amateur GM up here. Everybody. If we get this guy, if we get that guy, as a Met fan, I've been through this for the last 30 years. Mo Vaughn, Alomar, the list goes on and on. We're just one player away from being competitive, and it's never the truth. Or if you don't have a core of players there already, it's not going to happen anyways.
You'd think the Knicks would have learned from their past mistakes. I mean, how many guys have they brought in that were done before they even got here? Stoudemire. Stoudemire actually played okay for the Knicks, but I'm talking Stephon Marbury, Steve Francis. The list goes on and on and on of guys that they brought in that they gave a boatload of money to, that were way past their prime and weren't even able to help them for that short period of time that they were there. So I think hopefully they've learned from their past mistakes. I hate saying that because they'll probably prove me wrong. But I do think they may have learned from that. And I don't see them, bringing in an older veteran to add with these younger guys that are getting it done.
Yeah. I hope you're right, because they seem lately they've been trending in the right direction with Rose, the GM, and the acquisitions he made, like DiVincenzo and getting Anunoby before the deadline. I mean, look what Anunoby did before, without, if you discard his 2 injuries, what were they, 26-5 when he started or something like that?
Exactly. And I was critical of the trade at the time. I was kind of like, what are they doing with this? Is this guy really going to help them? And I agree with you, Casey. He did help. And he was a tremendous upgrade, over RJ Barrett, and seemed to, kind of tip the needle a little bit when he was out there. And once again, that's another guy that no one even mentions, was hurt. And if you add OG into the mix, you add Julius Randle to this team, who knows how far they would have gone.
And not to mention the signing of Brunson. That has to be one of the best free agent signings of all time. Look what he became this year. He became a superstar.
And
he's one of the best players in the NBA.
One of the best in New York history, one of that addition. So I want to go over switch a little bit, something we don't usually talk about a lot, WNBA, because it's been almost now. I want to talk about the beating that Caitlin Clark is taking at the hands of these girls when she's out on the court. My God, it looks like WWE wrestling out there with her on there. Have you been looking at some of the shots she's been taking? I mean, God.
Yeah, I actually watched the first WNBA game from start to finish the other night. I watched the Chicago Indiana game, and I've got to admit, she's not going to last long if they're going to let these girls beat the shit out of her like that. I mean, it's not going to happen.
Back in the 70s, there were these bad R-rated movies about women in prison called like Chained Heat. That's what I was watching.
Well, that sounds like one in the back of the movie store.
Exactly, it is. So, but I mean, it's like, the media's trying, and someone brought up a great point, and it is true when you think about it. And not giving her an excuse to this, but she just played a full college season, played through the playoffs, played to the finals, gets drafted, a week after she graduates, and has to be in camp 10 days later?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I never really paid attention to the WNBA at all. And that's one thing that people need to give Caitlin Clark credit for, is that the amount of eyeballs that she turned onto women's college basketball, not to mention the amount of eyeballs that she's turned on to the WNBA draft, the WNBA as a total. That in itself is a tremendous feat. And I just by her putting my eyes in that direction, I'm sitting here scratching my head wondering why the hell they have the draft, right after the championship game of college basketball. And then these girls go on and start playing on these teams that they just were added to. And I can't believe that she's even out there running around after, how many college games she played, getting all the way to the, NCAA finals, playing in the conference tournament. I mean, this girl's legs have to be, I know she's young, but still, it's a wonder to me that she hasn't blown her knee out.
If she was on UConn, she would have.
Exactly. That's a great example. I mean, what they lose 3-4 players this year to 5. Thank you.
5 and then 6 once the tournament started.
Yeah, 6 girls blowing their knees out. We all know that it's kind of been proven that they're more susceptible to it. And I would think that making them play 2 seasons in a row would even do that even more. But I did notice that they let them beat the crap out of her the other night. And, she's getting a lot of criticism too, which I don't really understand. I don't know. I guess people just thought she was going to come in and score, 30 points a game, but nobody really scores 30 points a game in the WNBA. And, right. She's just now getting there. And this team obviously had the first pick in the WNBA draft for a reason, because they sucked last year. And she's making them at least competitive. They were able to beat Chicago and get their first home win of the season. And, she was definitely a part of that.
And like you said, the fans that she's putting in the seats, my God, it gives this place that a chance.
Well, look at you two. You two are prime examples. Nate, you just said you watched your first WNBA game from start to finish. I have yet to do that. And Joe, you brought up the subject, which you never brought up the subject of the WNBA for as long as I've known you.
No, well, it's not something I watch. But I was like, when I said, I just saw the clips and I'm like, my God, what they're doing to this girl out there. And then won't they have to break for the Olympics in a month?
Yes, I think they go on hiatus, and then after a few weeks they all come back.
And she's playing in that too.
Yes, yeah. And so on top of that, she has to travel halfway across the world and play as long as they play in the tournament. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I just don't. I think they've got to look at when they start their season better. I mean, what's the difference between starting in May and starting in the end of June or July? And getting there, I forget how many games they play, but it's ridiculous.
It's only 30 something.
Yeah.
And they recently increased that too.
Yeah,
but the league is on the move. I mean, I follow it without watching it. Kind of. I know that the Connecticut team I think is 7-0 now. But they're adding two expansion teams. They're adding a team from San Francisco next year. They're going to call them the Golden State. Some kind of weird nickname that I've never seen before. Has to do with fighting women. And then I think they're adding a team in Canada right after that, maybe Toronto. Yes, Toronto. But and they expected the whole country to back that team up and maybe add more Canadian teams in the future. But they're definitely making strides. And now they even have charter flights for the players, which they've never had before.
Apparently some of them still don't, because they were fighting about that. But, Joe, and I'm glad you brought this up, because I've always wanted to ask you this. I mean, what do you think about a sports league that operates at a loss? To me, it's just a weird situation how, the WNBA, let's just be honest. I mean, they operated at a 12 or more $1 million loss per year. However, the NBA funds it, so it gets to keep going. It's just weird to me that a professional sports league exists and continues to function without making money. And maybe now they will, because people are talking about it like us, and people are watching it more. But that's what they need is somebody to become, I believe, the face of it, and to ride her out, because they've got to figure out a way to make money with this. I mean, it's what this is about. That's what pro sports are supposed to be for, is to make money. And that to me is something they have not been able to do.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like back in the 70s, there was a big push to make soccer an American game. And we had like the Cosmos in this area. And they brought in Pele at the end of his career, and Beckenbauer and Canalia. At the end of their careers, they were European stars that came in and they won a championship. And for like a 3-year period up here, it was popular because, you had the best players in the world playing out in New Jersey at the Meadowlands, and it brought people in, but they had nothing behind it. Still, most of the great players were playing back in Europe in the established leagues. It's a question of how long will the NBA continue to keep funding it? But the NBA makes so much money, and it's all about marketing streams. You were in sports marketing. Are we selling jerseys? Are people still showing up? Are we making enough money or in the NBA to cover this loss? I mean, as long as they can cover it, I think they'll keep it going because they're hoping for a turnaround.
Yeah, but I mean, you just have to think about all the things the NBA is funding now. I mean, you've got the G League that they're trying to use as kind of a feeder system, because a lot of guys, are coming out of college basketball too early or not playing in college basketball, and they have to have somewhere for these guys to go. There's only 2 rounds that they do in the NBA draft. So there's all these guys that come out every year that don't even get drafted and have nowhere to go. And so that's kind of why they've created this G League system as, basically the minor leagues to the NBA, and they're funding that as well. I mean, I understand that, ratings are still fairly good, but it's going to be interesting to me to see how many people watch this finals with the Celtics and the Mavs. I mean, it should be a good draw. You got Tatum, you got Luka, you've got some star power, but, I don't know if it's got enough oomph to really, bring people in. I mean, Casey, is this a finals that you're going to watch?
Nope. I can't root for either team, so I'm not watching it.
There you go. That's my point. So I don't think Casey's alone in that. You know, I don't know how much I'm going to watch it. I mean, I'm going to try, but I've actually probably watched the least amount of NBA playoffs this year that I've ever, you know, more than I've ever watched in my entire life, or the least that I've ever watched in my entire life. And you know, I'm not 100% sure what that reason is, but I believe a lot of it was the star power wasn't there. You know, Giannis was hurt. A lot of the Embiid was hurt. A lot of the big name guys weren't even playing. And I got to be honest, that kind of, you know, it took away from, you know, me wanting to check in on it.
Yeah, I think if Luka or Jason Tatum, who has not really had a great playoffs yet, comes out of this series as either, you know, the great thing about whether it be Jordan, whether it be Bird, whether it be Magic, whether it be LeBron, it was like a 50-50 split. Half the country loved these guys, half the country hated these guys. So for whatever reason you tuned in, we're either to root against them or root for them. Like you said, right now where Jason Tatum and Luka are at, Luka's admired, Jason Tatum's admired, but nobody really has a strong opinion about it. So that's what it's got to establish.
I don't think it's the matchup the NBA wanted. I mean, maybe the Celtics side, maybe, but certainly the West. I mean, certainly Denver would be a bigger draw, the defending champions.
Oh yeah,
and Jokic match against the Celtics. That would be a good matchup. You know, the Curry-led Warriors who've won, you know, what was it, 5 championships in the last 10 years or something like that, or with the LeBron-led Lakers. I think those would be a much larger TV draw matchup versus the Celtics than Dallas is. I mean, first of all, Dallas is not one of the biggest TV markets in the country to begin with, right?
No.
So and I'm not, and we're not the only ones who dislike Irving, and you know he's one of the reasons I'm not going to watch it, and I'm sure there's other people that feel the same way. And nothing against Luka. I don't mean to sound racist at all, but you know he's from Eastern Europe. He didn't have any kind of following until 2-3 years ago. So he's not the household name LeBron and Curry and these other guys are. So yeah, it's not. I don't think it's a really good matchup for ESPN, ABC.
And the other thing about it is, another thing is that Dallas has a hockey team that's still in the running. So not a lot of attention down there. So even there's not a groundswell behind them either. So I don't know. We'll see.
You know what I was thinking earlier? I hope my son-in-law Steve isn't gonna view this because he's a Cowboys fan. But the Cowboys have to be the worst team in Dallas right now. The Rangers won the World Series, right?
Yeah.
The Stars could make the NHL Finals, and the Mavericks already did. So where are the Cowboys who haven't made the playoffs in 20 years? Who haven't gotten past the first round of the playoffs in 20 years?
Yeah, they make it. They just can never win. So
that's something to smile about. All right, let's get to a little not preseason yet, but football. Saw this on the internet this morning as a Giant fan. Not something I really want to hear, but I don't know. I'll read it for you guys and see what you say. Drew Lock was talking about his role with the Giants coming here. I guess, you know, everybody's hoping, you know, that they figure out the quarterback thing. But here's what Drew Lock had to say about his job, or about his new job. I would say I appreciate the people who respect my game and know that I can do and know what I can do. But you're the backup, and you're here to help Daniel. 3 years, I wasn't a starting quarterback. I was patient. I know how to be a backup. Just be ready when your time is. Shouldn't he want to be a starter?
Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah. I mean, I think you would want a guy who's going to be a starter, but I have to give this guy a little bit of credit. Last year when he was thrust into action, you know, when Geno went down, he played pretty well. And this guy was kind of an afterthought, you know, in my opinion. Casey was talking about the best trade ever, you know, in another sport. One of the worst trades of all time, maybe the worst trade of all time, is the Russell Wilson trade. And, you know, Drew Lock was a part of that. And everybody just thought like, oh, you know, they're just getting rid of him for a roster spot. And he went up to Seattle and actually, you know, looked pretty good. He looked better than he did in Denver. And he's going to be on the field. Okay. There's no doubt about it. 17 games. You know, how many times has Daniel Jones made it through 17 games while he's been
once.
Okay, so thank you. So it's not going to happen. He's probably not going to start the season, to be honest with you. I mean, they're talking about that he's going to, but I'll believe it when I see it. And so Drew Lock's going to be out there. So I think you want him to want that, but I also think maybe they're telling him to say that because they don't want a quarterback competition. They're like, you're going to be there. You're going to be out in the field. You're our backup. And they did bring him in to be the backup. So I don't think he's saying anything that's not true. But maybe he's been, spoon-fed this to spit to the media. But, maybe he's comfortable with where he's at this point. I just do think he's a little bit better than people give him credit for. And I think we're going to see him on the field. And, hopefully he does want to be a starter because he's going to get a chance to prove he can be that guy as soon as Daniel Jones goes down, or maybe even before Daniel Jones is ready if he has to start the season.
Yeah. Well, the guy knows his role, so that's a good thing. He's always been a backup. He's been in the NFL. It's got to be 5-6 years now. Out of Missouri, I think.
Yep.
He's always been a backup, and as you said, he came in for Geno. He only plays when the guy ahead of him gets hurt. But it's good that there's not going to be a controversy. Daniel Jones did have a decent year 2 years ago. This is his make or break season, as we know, because the Giants have an out after this season. If he's hurt or underperforms, they can let him go for a certain amount of money and rebuild again at the quarterback position. So Daniel Jones kind of has to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah, they
have to give him this opportunity to see if he's NFL worthy or not, and then that'll determine their future with him. He could get hurt, but do you foresee the Giants making the playoffs if Drew Lock is the quarterback? I mean, what's his ceiling? It's not that high, I don't think. So potentially the only way that this team has any chance to be any good is if Daniel Jones lives up to his expectations as pertained to him as the number 6 pick in the draft a few years ago. Lock isn't the guy.
Yeah, maybe I overreacted to the quote, but I just remember reading John Madden's first book, and he talked about an old-time quarterback named George Myra, who was a lifetime backup. Then, as Madden used to always say, the most popular player on any football team is the backup quarterback, because he doesn't do anything, and if the quarterback throws an interception, he's like, but he used to say George Myra never wanted to play because he loved holding that clipboard and getting that paycheck. But the last thing he wanted to be was on the field. And he goes, and every time the press would come up and talk to the guy, he goes, I don't know, they won't give me a chance. And he'd be smiling all his way to the bank going, yeah, but I didn't get hit at all. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's true. But, today's day and age, things are a little bit different. I mean, we're playing 17 games now plus, three preseason games. So you're talking about 20 games. I know the starters don't play all preseason, but the backups do. And so you're going to get on the field eventually. I mean, I think there was 72 different starting quarterbacks last year. And I think there'll be more this year. I mean, it's just there's guys that are, oft injured and have been banged up. And there's going to be more of it. We're going to see it over and over again. The offensive lines, for whatever reason, aren't as good as some of them have been in the past. And I think, part of it is due to the fact that there's a lot more pass protection these days because everybody wants to throw the football. And the more you throw it, the more you open your quarterback up to getting hit. So these backups are going to get out there at some point. I mean, we saw some teams go, 4 or 5 deep last year. Look at what Cleveland had. They had to go get Joe Flacco off the couch, and he came in and did a pretty good job, to say the least. So these guys are going to get an opportunity if you're, on a roster and you're a 2 or maybe even a 3. At some point, you're going to get – I mean, hell, the Jets wanted nothing to do with Zach Wilson being on their team last year, much less him being on the field. And by the 4th play of the season, he was their starter.
Right.
So, careful what you wish for. If you've got a guy that's on your roster and, he's active, he's probably going to be on the field, sooner more than later.
They traded Wilson to Denver, didn't they?
They did.
Well,
and
Denver really knows how to acquire quarterbacks, don't they?
Wow, they've got a bunch of shitty ones. I'll tell you that much. I don't know what we'll see out of the kid from Oregon and whether or not he's going to be a good pick. But, they really don't have much behind him. You're talking about Zach Wilson, and you're talking about the kid that used to be at the Patriots, who played for the Raiders last year, Jared Stidham.
Garoppolo?
Stidham,
Okay.
who, is not a starter in my mind. So, it's almost like they're going to have to start the young kid in Denver just because of nobody
Bo
else.
Nix. Yeah, you can't start Wilson. You got to start Bo Nix. See what he's got.
I'm here. Let's talk about the rumblings coming out of Pittsburgh that it looks like Justin Fields is pushing ahead of Russell Wilson. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know. You guys are hearing different stuff. I think it'd be a good move. I would put Justin Fields in right away. That's just me. But what do you guys think?
Go ahead, Case.
I would go with Wilson. I would give Wilson the first shot. I mean, he's got the history. He's got a championship under his belt, many playoff appearances. Fields didn't impress me. I had no problem with Chicago dumping him, to take Williams with the first pick. I mean, to me, which guy potentially could lead the team further? And I think Russell Wilson's the answer to that.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think Fields will be the starter by at least week 6. I think they'll start off with Russell Wilson as the starter, just because of who Russell Wilson is and what his name is. But if you look, I mean, we're talking about 3 teams, in 4 years, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason that the Broncos are paying $29 million for him to play for another team. I can't remember another time. I mean, somebody fill me in here. When is the last time another team paid $30 million for a guy to play on another NFL franchise? I mean,
the Jets.
I mean, it probably is the Jets, but I mean, I can't. I mean, all I do is watch football, and I can't for the life of me think of a reason why somebody would pay $30 million for a guy to play in another team. I mean, it just makes no sense. Obviously, we talked about the trade earlier. The trade was a mess. You can say, well, Russell, maybe Denver just didn't work out for him. Well, this is two stops in a row now, because it really wasn't working out in Seattle either. There was a reason that they moved on and went in a different direction. I mean, they were ready to put Geno out there, which, let's be honest, he's played all right, but nobody was talking about, Geno being a bona fide NFL starter. And, John Schneider and Pete Carroll were comfortable with him playing instead of Russell. And to me, Russ is washed, man. I mean, I think there came a time where Russell cares more about, what event he's going to on Saturday night more than he does about what he's doing on Sunday. And I think that's shown in his play. And, I just don't think he's got it left in him. And I think you've got to see what you want, what you've got with Justin Fields. And was his career in Chicago the best? Hell no. He's left a lot to be desired. But it's not like as bad as people make it out to be. Chicago was 7-10 last year, and their roster was garbage. I mean, they've done a lot of shit in this offseason to try and upgrade it around Caleb Williams. And I'm like, what if they would have given Justin Fields what Caleb Williams has now? Bona fide wide receivers, a pretty well constructed offensive line, and they've added pieces on defense. So, we'll see what it looks like. The best thing in the world that could have happened to Justin Fields was getting the hell out of Chicago. Okay. That is the best thing. Do I think he's going to be a bona fide NFL starter for 10, 15 years? I don't know. I really don't. I don't think that we've seen that yet, and we can say that, but I definitely don't think that he's washed. And I don't think that you can sit here and tell me that there's no way that he can succeed, because he's shown flashes. He's looked good at times, and we've never seen him with a real, NFL team around him. And that's what he's going to have in Pittsburgh, because we all know that the Pittsburgh organization knows what the hell they're doing. And, they haven't had a season under 500 in a long time for a reason. And if ever, Justin was going to succeed, it's going to be in Pittsburgh if it's going to happen.
Yeah, I have good feeling about him in Pittsburgh too, because as you said, that team, I mean, with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph as their quarterback last year, they made the playoffs.
Right.
You a couple of years ago, at the end of Ben Roethlisberger's career, you had the duck call guy, you had this guy, and still they were competitive teams. So I'll tell you, Tomlin is right up there as the best coach. And I know you hear Colin Cowherd and all these guys, oh, he's defensive, he's this, he's that. Tell me what he does do. He wins. Don't tell it's never pretty, but that's not the Pittsburgh way. Even when they had Bradshaw, even when they had Roethlisberger, they weren't really pretty teams. They were gritty teams, and that's what he gets. That's what that community demands. That's what they get, and that's why they win. And it's. I think Justin Fields will do fine down there because I think Tomlin's smart enough. Although he was very thick-headed last year about his offensive coordinator, I think he's going to make the offensive coordinator fit an offense around what the quarterback skills are. And, maybe that's the one big change he'll make because he'll change his formula of maybe running the ball 80% of the time and maybe go back to when Roethlisberger was there and he could throw the ball around a little bit and open up, get Pickens out there one-on-one and maybe make some big plays. So I think it's a good place for him.
It's a tough division, though. I mean, think of that division. There's no bad teams in that division.
No, there isn't. And that's what they faced last year, and they still got it through. Well, here's the deal. Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow's back being Joe Burrow, they're in trouble. Cleveland's got a great defense. If Deshaun Watson can get back to 80%, 90% of what he was 4 years ago before he decided to take a year off because he had a hissy fit. And you're going against Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, who are going to be there in the end too. So it's going to be tough. But that they're used to that. Tomlin's used to that, and I think he'll be ready for it.
They've been in that division for a long time, and they still end up, over 500. So I've got confidence in Pittsburgh and where the way they have their team set up right now. And it is in my opinion one of the best, if not the best division. So I'm glad Casey brought that up. Every one of these teams, this is the only division in football where every team was over 500 last year. And the Bengals were able to get, over that 500 mark without Joe Burrow. I mean, They had Jake Browning, who, everybody loves him now. No one knew who the hell he was until he went in there and started playing. And he was very impressive, in my opinion, for what he was able to do in Joe's absence. And I got to be honest, I'm not sold with what the Bengals have done this offseason. I mean, they've got all their wide receivers are pissed off. They let Joe Mixon walk out of town. The offensive line is shuffling a little bit. They've got some chaos going on in the defense as well. Trey Hendrickson wants a trade. He wants out of there. It sounds like everybody on the team wants out. And that's not a good sign when you're about to play games in less than 2.5 months.
Yeah, Mixon, I think, is a big loss because I thought he brought a lot of leadership to the backfield and helped out a lot. He's a multi-talented back. I mean, he can do everything. So that's hard to replace.
He's one of the best blitz pickup running backs in the entire NFL. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, not to mention, run it on first down. So I think that's going to be a big loss for them. And I'm not sure, who they think is going to replace that. Zach Moss, did fairly well last year in limited action in Indianapolis. They drafted Chase Brown the year before out of Illinois. But neither one of those guys really moves the needle for me. And with their wide receivers somewhat in question, I'm a little bit concerned about what they've got going on in Cincy.
All right, and let's talk about the defending Super Bowl champs. Have we found their kryptonite off the field stuff? It's like let's let our kicker give a commencement speech and piss off everybody. And then you got Kelsey's wife or whatever, or Kelsey's sister-in-law or whatever. What is going on? Is this the only thing that could take down Kansas City?
It could be. I mean, they got a bunch of crackpot receivers. One of them should be in prison, right? And I think they still have Tony, who they got from the Giants, right?
Right.
He's always been a head case. He's had some big games in the postseason for them, but he's not someone that you can rely upon. Yeah, I think they're receiving, other than tight end, of course, with Kelsey, the receiving core is kind of a mess. But they have Mahomes, so you can't count them out. They got Mahomes.
Yeah, and that's I agree with you, but that's what we were saying last year. Me and Joe both, and I admit this, we're saying, we were just didn't expect them to be able to win a Super Bowl with the guys they had on that receiving core. And look what they did. They won this damn Super Bowl. And I think they're just trying to do it by a group of guys instead of, just having Tyreek Hill out there. They've got a group But, Xavier Worthy hasn't made the greatest choices thus far, posting videos of him making it rain at the strip clubs when he was supposed to be when he was missing from OTAs. Then you got Rashee Rice, who's been arrested 15 times, this offseason. So those two guys are penciled in as their starters, by the way, Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. And who knows what the hell is going on between those two. But, you still got Justin Watson. You've got Marquise Brown, who's not my favorite wide receiver, but he's on the roster. They've got Sky Moore, who they're still trying to see what, they can do with him. Cornell Powell, Justin Ross. They've got a pretty deep room, and they've got the best quarterback in the NFL. So that's helpful.
Will they keep Butker around? I understand.
You know what his contract is?
I don't know, but he's very important to that team because he is a very consistent clutch field goal kicker. I'm not saying, and I'm not saying anybody should, but these things have a way of creeping up, and NFL, they protect the shield. There could be a something come down from Mr. Goodell going, maybe you should move on from him. We don't need the ladies picketing your parking lot during training camp. Maybe. What do you think? Do you think they'll step in or let Andy Reid handle it internally and hope it goes away?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can fire some guy for saying what his opinions are. I mean, I kind of feel like that's the whole point of our country, is to allow people to say what they think. So if we start firing people,
excuse me, Nate, that's why Kyrie's still in the NBA, right?
Exactly. I mean, I mean, do I agree with what he said? And I mean, not really. I mean, my wife works and also takes care of our kids. So, I think women are super women. But the guy's allowed to think what he wants, and he can boot it 65 yards. So I think he'll be out there. It's off season, man. I mean, we're looking for anything to talk about. We're looking for anybody to say something stupid so that we've got a headline. And luckily, the Chiefs are providing plenty of fodder for us, either by getting arrested or saying stupid shit. So I guess we should applaud these guys for giving us plenty to talk about. But you know what? We worried all last year about the Chiefs. They lose opening night to the Lions. We're looking at their wide receiver core. Joe's just saying, I just don't see it. And, I was right there. I was right there with them. And look what they did. They made it all the way to the Super Bowl. So when you've got Andy Reid as your coach, you got Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. And let's be honest, last year, it wasn't even really about that. It was about their defense. They had the best defense in the NFL. Steve Spagnuolo running the things. And then the guys on the field getting it done. My biggest thing is the loss of their cornerback, who they traded away. I think that losing Snead is probably going to be a bigger thing to me than anything else that we've talked about. I just don't know how you replace that guy. If you think back to last year in the playoff game against Baltimore, you had the wide receiver running free, going towards
Flowers.
Flowers, Zay Flowers, the rookie out of Boston College, about to march in the end zone, and Snead goes down and knocks the ball away, and there's the game. So this guy made big plays all the time, and I understand you can't pay everybody, and they just didn't have the money to give him $20+ million that he wanted. But I think he's going to be a big loss.
Yeah, when it came to when I first heard about the field goal kicker, the first thing came out. I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was years ago when Peyton Manning was still in Indianapolis, and their kicker, they had a good kicker at the time, who said something to the media about Peyton maybe not being the best leader in the world. Peyton comes out and goes, "Yeah, our foolish field goal kicker goes out and gets drunk and says stupid things to the media." I was like,
"Yeah, Vanderjack."
Yeah,
that was at the Pro Bowl.
Yeah,
and Vanderjack's run his mouth. So yeah, I mean, did it shock me that kickers? I mean, you put a microphone in front of a kicker, you're going to get something stupid come out. So it didn't really shock me, but I see him still on the roster. He's been too important to what they do, and they'll figure out a way to bury the story.
Unless you can get that guy out of Baltimore, you're not going to find a better kicker.
Tucker.
Yeah. You're not going to find a better kicker there. So that goes without saying. We got about 5 minutes left here. Let's think about I don't know. Anything you guys want to hit before we I hit the last idea?
But I see you're purposely avoiding baseball because your team sucks and mine doesn't.
Well, that's not news.
No, I was gonna ask you about the ruling last week, Joe. You haven't said anything about it. Where now the universities can pay these guys. So not only can these collectives and these NIL monies come to them, but now the universities are able to just put these guys on the payroll. And I'm just trying to figure out how this is going to make things more competitive. I mean, am I worried? No, because Ohio State's going to pay them whatever they want, and we got plenty of money. But how does this help? Teams that aren't Ohio State. I mean, I think
I don't think it does, Nate. I think it creates more.
It makes it worse. Right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think
the Ohio States of the world. Yeah, the Ohio States of the world are the ones that are going to reap the biggest benefits from it, and be able to recruit even more players because they'll be able to acquire more money and be on better teams and be on television more often and be in better ball games. And it's a vicious cycle, I think.
I think what we're morphing into through this is kind of for lack of a better example of the model I think we're going to end up with, is going to be Premier League soccer, where you have your 20 or so teams that can afford the best players in college that'll be playing for the quote unquote national championship. And all the other teams are going to fall into kind of conferences or whatever below them. And that's the only way I can see this working.
There's not 20 teams. I mean, there hasn't been 20 teams in a long time. The last several years, maybe there's been 4. Maybe there's been 3, maybe there's been 5 that'll compete for a national championship. And that's why I don't understand the 12-team playoff. Was there 12 teams last year that could have competed for the national championship? I mean, last year was probably one of the more competitive years that we've seen in a long time. And, we were talking about maybe 7 or 8 teams that probably had enough to make a difference. And that's why I'm very interested to see how this 12-team playoff thing works out, and whether or not these games are exciting. I mean, you've all watched this. There's been blowouts in the final, in the college football playoff in the Final Four. There's been several blowouts. I mean, there's been some decent games, but there's been a lot of teams getting railed, 1 versus 4. And so I'm interested to see what it looks like, with the 12 seed in there, and whether or not that's something that's appealing to people watching, teams 6 through 12 duke it out. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Well, I don't think it's that appealing at all, because the way it stands now, the top 4 teams are going to get a bye, right?
Correct.
So probably the conference champion from the 4 remaining Power 4 conferences getting a bye. So you're going to have 5 playing 12, and who's going to care, because 12's got no shot, and it's probably going to be the 6th place team in the Big Ten, right? But what really cracks me up, and then Joe, I'll let you speak since we only have a few minutes left. What really cracks me up is they haven't even started yet with this 12 team, and they're talking about expanding it to 14.
I know.
What do they get? So I think the logic is they want to give the SEC champion and the Big Ten champion automatic double buys or something like that, and then have another 12 teams battle it out to face those 2.
Well, I think I think what we're it's like every sport. We talked about at the beginning of this broadcast how the playoffs are becoming totally watered down. I mean, we all love the NCAA tournament's first 2 weeks because of the potential, and when the upsets do happen, we love it. But then the second 2 weeks, we're sitting there going, "Oh, we don't have Kentucky to root against, or we don't have Duke here. We got this dark horse who's not going to be really up to the task once it gets to the second weekend." So the thing I say about the football playoffs is we're going to have those kind of things happen. We understand that. And when you talk about the 12 teams, you got to have – here's the tough part. Ideally, probably in the back of these guys' minds, they're thinking, okay, Ohio State will be there, Michigan will be there, Notre Dame will be there, Penn State will be there, USC will be there, Oklahoma will be there, Texas will be there, Alabama will be there, LSU. They think of those national programs, the programs that have fans all around the country. And there are maybe 12 to 20 that can carry that torch. But when you get somebody in there that nobody cares about, it's going to take away. And if they pull an upset and they take out an Alabama, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt the draw. So But it's the way we're going in sports where all we can think about is play. All the people in charge think about is playoff money. They don't care about the regular seasons. They really don't. They just want to. They want to get their playoff money because that's when they get their big ratings, and that's what they want.
Well, and this is what no one's even really talking about, but we've had guys that have been sitting out of bowl games, for the past 5 years.
We've talked about it.
Yeah, what's going to happen now when you've got guys that some teams are going to have to play 3-4 games, after the regular season? Let's say you're in the conference championship game and then you lose in the conference championship game, so you get a lower seed, and then you're playing in the first round of the college football playoff, and then you've got to win 3-4 games there. You already played 13, then you got to play 3 or 4 games in the playoff. You're talking about 16, 17 games in college, and then you get drafted, and then you got to play 20 with the preseason in the NFL. I mean, aren't we going to see more guys getting hurt? I mean, all I hear about is player safety, and that we want to, take care of the players. How the hell are you going to take care of a kid who's playing in 40 games in a year?
It's like the emperor's never worried about the gladiators getting chopped up in Rome, because that was the entertainment everybody wanted. But it's like, there's no easy answer to this. But I knew and I said it at the time, once they open up Pandora's box, you don't know where it's gonna end, because now you have guys. Well, Caleb Williams made $8 million last year. $8 million.
Yeah, and he sucked.
And he made $8 million. There are backup quarterbacks in the end. Brock Purdy doesn't make $1 million.
No.
And he's, he has the team in the Super Bowl. So, I mean, this NIL stuff is just ridiculous. I understand, that it all stemmed from some stupid decisions by the NCAA for like banning kids because their coach bought him a burger or took him out for pizza or, loaned him $10 to take his girlfriend out or whatever. And that became a huge thing for them. But they never saw what was going to happen at the other end with this, which is now it's no longer amateur sports. It's pro sports.
It's pro sports. And we're not paying the guys based on production either, because they're not getting contracts, with incentives in it. We're just paying them based on, what their name is or what they're doing. I mean, think about the guys that made the most money last year. Shedeur Sanders made $5 million. They went 4-8, in case you missed it, and were 1-8 in the Pac-12. Lost their last 6 games. Bronny James is number 2. I think he made like $5 million last year. The next on the list is Travis Hunter, who made $3 million, and he was on that same 4-8 team. And the guy right behind Travis Hunter was Arch Manning, who is the 3rd-string quarterback on Texas. So you're telling me how any of this makes sense? Half the guys that make $5 million in college, are on shit teams or don't even play. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
And half those guys you just mentioned, Nate, are from families that don't need the money.
Exactly. Exactly. You're not helping these inner city kids that are that this whole thing was set up to give them money so they can make some cash off their name, image, and likeness. We're giving money to the kids that already have money.
Right. Well, and obviously to get them to continue playing in college and not make the jump so early when they weren't ready.
Yeah.
But again, it's just, when you look at the history of college football, and I'm not sure, I don't know the math off the top of my head, but I would say, for the 100 years or so when we said we've had college football, I would probably say 95% of those players never played professional sports, but they got a free education out of it. And if they made anything with that education, they made out pretty well. I mean, when you think about the guys on a NFL or on a college football roster, how many were there? 75, 100 players?
At least.
How many of those players will ever or never see the field? But if they get the free education, they get the connections. They get jobs on Wall Street. They have jobs through their connections they make in college. I just don't get it. I think what they should have done is, look, if you can make a deal outside, go ahead. But because half these guys, no one's going to give them the money they're getting. They're not going to pay $5 million for a backup tackle at Ohio State so why should the school be giving them the money now? Because they already get the free education from the school.
You're asking You're asking the wrong person. I don't understand that, but I do like the fact that, I think more guys are staying in college instead of jumping straight to the league. I mean, that's something that we were seeing time and time again, where, the list of juniors that were declaring, or, redshirt sophomores that were declaring for the NFL draft, the list kept getting longer and longer every year. I think the last year it was over 130. And, then it was cut in half to 70 once we had the first year of the NIL. And this year it was the least amount of juniors that we've ever seen. So maybe the one positive thing is it will keep guys, as Casey said, around a little bit longer and maybe help with development.
And then you got to think of the transfer portal.
Yeah. But the transfer portal is insane. And we've talked about this. There was how many thousands of names on it? 1,500. I don't even want to guess the number, but it was a ridiculous number of people that are allowed to that were in the portal, and to me they got to set a limit. They can't have unlimited time to transfer for these guys. You got guys transferring three times. And I saw last week some guy, I can't remember who it was, went back to school number 1 where he transferred from 3 years ago. He went back.
There's several guys that are playing on their 4th team in 4 years, and that to me is ridiculous. And the amount of guys, and I'm not just talking about mid-tier guys that are looking for a spot in the field. Quarterbacks. DJ Ugalele, he played at Clemson, then he went to Oregon State, and now he's going to Florida State. I mean, that's 3 teams in 3 years for a guy who's a starting quarterback, and he's not the only one. I mean, there's a lot of players right now that are playing on a different team every year, and to me that's sad. Because I can't imagine going, playing. I played at one school, and it was hard enough playing at one college program. I can't imagine playing at 4 different programs and going to 4 different campuses, trying to figure out where the hell the dorms are and who the girls are and all that shit.
Where the parties are.
Yeah, where the best parties are at. When you're on campus for 3 months.
Yeah, it's totally ridiculous. It's just getting out of hand, but we'll have to save that for another day. Anyways, guys, any big plans for the weekend here or the end of the weekend? We got half a day left.
Weekend's almost over.
Yeah, weekend's about shot, and since it's pouring down rain, my pool day is over. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. Go watch the NBA, WNBA, I guess.
I guess it's man. All I got left is the Mets.
Good luck.
Let me just put in a plug about college baseball. I'm loving it. There's so many games that are walk-offs, and you got small schools. You got like an Ivy League schools. I mean, Penn came close to winning 2 games with a 500 record, right? Because I know how much you love the Ivy League, Joe.
Yeah.
You got Long Island University in there. UConn,
the Blackbirds,
St. John's,
right? You got UConn, who's obviously a basketball school. They won their first 2 games in their region. They just have to win 1 more game to make the super regionals. They beat number 8 seed Oklahoma yesterday late at night. So most people probably don't even know it. But it's just fun to watch. The games are close, a lot of home runs, so many comebacks. It was one game I was watching yesterday where they were up 5-1 in the 9th inning, gave up 6 runs, something like that, and still scored 3 in the bottom of the 9th to win the game.
Yeah.
It's been fun to watch, and it's really just getting started.
Yeah, this team down here has had quite the season, and I think yesterday they hit their 153rd home run in one season on one team. And I mean, it's crazy. You watch this Tennessee baseball team go up, and it's like every guy has 16 homers, and the next guy comes up 20 homers and 15. I mean, like the guy that's batting 9th has 17 home runs on the season. So
that's why they're number 1, right? Aren't they top ranked?
They are number 1, and they've got the pitching too, and they have the best coach in all of college baseball. Not just because the ladies think he's hot. He's turned this program around. I mean, I just living here. I'm an Ohio State fan, but I live in Knoxville. And, we would go over to the games on Tuesday for $2. It's $2 Tuesdays. You get $2 to get in, $2 hot dogs, whatever you want. And you had your own section because, hell, nobody was there. Now it's $250 to even get into a game. And everybody's a Vol baseball fan all of a sudden. So Tony Vitello is certainly turned it on. And sorry, Cobber, your Hoosiers are going to get walloped again because they got their ass kicked last night.
All right, we're going to call it a wrap right now on that and get on with the rest of our days. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this morning for this special show, and we'll be back, Nate, see you Thursday night, and you and me, Casey, next week.
Yes, sir.
Sounds good, buddy.
Have a good rest of the day, fellas.
Take care, guys.